All right, so recently Maron was on Tiger Belly, and he talked about the drama that Joe Rogan kind of started between him and Bert Kreischer that happened earlier this year. If you remember, I made a video about it, but basically Mark, he made a TikTok where he was talking about how Netflix has created a cash grab culture with comedians, and he didn't mention any names, but it sounded like he was probably describing Bert, which is what Rogan thought, and he sent this to Bert and told him, like, hey, Mark is not your friend, he's talking shit about you. So then afterwards, Bert talked about this on a podcast, which I'll play here, but first I'm going to play the clip of Mark's TikTok.
Netflix is creating a cash grab culture for a certain echelon of comics. Incentive to do lazy specials. F it, man. They're giving me what? It's the way the world works now. You can go see guys on their rambling, drunk, pop-up cash grab tour. Thousands of people pay millions of dollars to say, nah, it's okay. You know, it's a few good jokes.
People that were my friends, I've heard them talk shit about me on podcasts or behind my back. Rogan texted me the other day. Some guy was talking shit about me on a podcast, and Rogan texted to me. He goes, yo, he's not your boy. And I was like...
He pays attention to that stuff.
Joe is Joe's hyper aware of weird concentric circles. He doesn't care about him. He doesn't care about, like, people talking shit. He cares about his boys and, like, yo, just giving you a heads up. This guy talks shit. He sent it to me, and I was like, fuck that guy. And the guy, I'm friends with the guy. I've had him on my podcast 2 times, 3 times. I've been on his podcast twice.
What did he say about you? I'm mad.
He said Netflix has ruined comedy. It's not what it used to be, and now you got these guys doing these arena tours where they're not that funny and they're drunk as fuck on stage, and they should call their tour the that was okay tour. And I was like, first of all,
but he's projecting his own insecurities.
Oh yeah, he's done that his whole career. If I said his name, you'd go, oh, that makes sense. It tracks.
What does it rhyme with?
Yeah, so a lot of people believed he was talking about Bert, myself included, you know, especially because even Bert himself believed that, and Rogan. So I thought there's no question about it. You know, Mark also doesn't seem like the kind of person that would respect Bert's comedy very much. And Bert, I think, has 3 Netflix specials. I believe he's signed on for 2 more. And calling his tour a rambling, drunk, cash grab tour, I think some people would say that describes it pretty well. But apparently Mark, he claims he wasn't actually talking about Bert here. And it does kind of make sense because the one thing that doesn't apply to Bert is the pop-up tour. Like Mark mentioned that. And Bert, I don't think has ever really done pop-up shows. But somebody who is known for that and who Mark claims he's actually talking about is Dave Chappelle, which does kind of add up because, you know, Dave, I think, has probably one of the biggest Netflix contracts as a comedian. And he's also known to be a drinker. And when Mark posted this TikTok, he said Bert was mad at him afterwards, and Mark sounded all confused as to why. So it sounded like maybe he really didn't have Bert in mind when he's talking about this, even though, again, a lot of it can be applied to Bert.
I think Bert Kreischer's mad at me. I don't know. Did I say something about Bert Kreischer? I saw him last night. He seemed mad at me. I guess I could text him. You know, it's weird. I'm getting older, and sometimes, you know, I say shit again. For years, I was very careful about saying shit, and I might have said a little something. All it takes is a little something.
So then last week on Tiger Belly, Mark talked about it again and clarified that he wasn't actually talking about Bert.
Bert got mad at me, and it was like, it made me very upset.
Is he
because it got out of hand. Huh?
Still mad?
Well, it wasn't about a real thing. Like, I was on an Instagram Live, just doing a thing, and I was rambling on, you know, like I do. And I was talking about Netflix. And basically what I said was that Netflix has created this cash grab culture where a certain echelon of comics can just do, pop-up shows shit-faced and make millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And I wasn't talking about Bert.
Right.
Do you know who I was talking about?
Andrew.
No.
Who?
Chappelle. So I was talking,
Dave Chappelle. Yeah.
and it's not an unknown thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does a pop-up
It was unknown
show.
to me, but...
Yeah. But I decided just to be diplomatic and not mention names. And then somebody on fucking Instagram was like, talking about Kreischer.
Oh, that's how it started.
And then it picked up some traction in that world. I don't even know any of this is going on.
Yeah.
And on TikTok.
Yeah, you saw it? Yeah. So I had no idea any of this is going on.
Wow.
And then I'm flipping through the stuff, and I saw Bert at the Comedy Store, you know, before I knew anything, and he was like so shut down and weird. I'm like, what's going on? You good? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Wow.
Why, Bert? You never see Bert like that.
Yeah.
And then like I'm scrolling and I see him on a podcast saying like, you know, there's this guy who we were friends. You know, if he's been on my show,
I saw that.
I've been on his show,
Yeah.
and like he said some shit,
And, Rogan got in my ear and said, he's not your boy and all this. And his name rhymes with, and I'm like, oh my God.
And I just think it's hilarious that Rogan's the one who's stirring the pot here, because usually he acts like he's above drama and he tells all his friends not to read comments and not pay attention to what people are saying about them. But with this, he sent Bert that clip, and apparently Marc wasn't even talking about him, which is kind of embarrassing because that means Rogan listened to that TikTok and heard Marc describe Netflix cash grab culture and drunk rambling tours, and the first person that came to mind is Bert Kreischer. But also Marc did say that somebody took his TikTok and reposted it and put Bert as a hashtag. So I guess maybe Rogan saw the hashtag and thought that was Marc's original TikTok or something. I don't know, but I just think it's funny that Rogan heard all that and is like, oh, he's definitely talking about Bert here. He's confident enough to send it to him and tell him, like, dude, he's talking about you. He's not your friend. So the fact that Marc wasn't even talking about Bert there kind of makes Rogan look bad now, because he just heard all that and assumed he was describing Bert's comedy, which obviously he wasn't the only one. A lot of people thought that, but it's just funny coming from Bert's friend. Because if Bert had stumbled upon that TikTok on his own, he probably would have convinced himself that Marc wasn't talking about him, which, he would have been right. But the fact that Rogan sent it to him and said, hey, he's talking about you, his opinion carries the most weight, obviously, so Bert's going to take his word for it.
This happened, yeah.
Right. So then I'm like, this is crazy. And so I call Bert.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I wasn't talking about you.
Wow.
I said, you don't do pop-up shows.
Yeah, yeah.
I was talking about Dave. And
Yeah.
Bert's like, well, that tracks. I'm like, well, great. So now what do we do?
Right. He
put
made
this
the whole
back?
thing. Yeah, he made a whole thing. out
And,
of it.
it was, and ultimately it doesn't really matter. I don't live in that world. But
you do.
But it was just so upsetting.
Yeah.
That somebody had clipped it for TikTok,
For TikTok.
and then rehashtagged it.
Wow. Wow.
And Bert's like, well, I saw the tag, and I'm like, I didn't do that.
Yeah,
Kid. I'm gonna clip that and then hashtag it. Bert Kreischer isn't funny.
yeah. Yeah.
And it's
I
just
was
like-
the audience for that, though, because I was like, oh, this is great.
I had no
But I
idea
did-
what's going on.
Yeah. But it is fun. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, but it's just like it put.
It sucks for the friendship.
Yeah. But it's fun
It's
to
just
watch.
and Rogan had bought it as well. He thought,
yeah.
But I really wasn't talking about him.
Yeah.
And like I said, I definitely believed he was talking about Bert, because also I found out about this once Bert talked about it on that podcast. So if Bert himself believed it and Rogan believed it, I thought, all right, he's definitely talking about him. But now hearing Marc explain it, it does make sense that he's talking about Dave, even though I'm sure some people probably believe that Marc's just kind of backtracking because he feels bad now that Bert's upset or something. But let me know what you guys think about it down in the comments, and make sure you check out my Patreon account if you want access to over 90 exclusive videos from me. And you can hear about Michael Richards, Kramer's infamous meltdown at the Laugh Factory. That's a classic that people really like. And there's just a ton of other stuff. There's a lot to go through. If you're a fan of the channel, I highly recommend it. I'll put a link in the description.